I need to seriously like slow down or something with my reading, but part of how I slow down is by reading. Last time I said that there were more books that I needed to review, and I didn't because I had too many books. So I'm going to start first with The Wager. The Wager was one of my book club picks for this month. Like, okay, well, I like the idea of seafaring and maritime. Most of the people we're going to be meeting actually later this week, but some of them are on Goodreads and a lot of them didn't really enjoy this one. I found it to be pretty average and very informational, very educational. If you've never heard of The Wager, it is a ship that existed back in the 1700s. And there was a man named Commodore George Anson. He was pretty much in charge of the Wager and making sure it got around to where it needed to go on an expedition filled with goods. So a lot of this beginning part of this book just had so much information, and I think that was kind of like not necessary in a way. The buildup at the beginning was just too slow. But there were so many good parts in this as we went through this book. And when we finally got to the shipwreck, by the way, because this whole book is about a shipwreck, there was talks about Jenkins' ear, and that was like a pickled ear. It was very strange. During their shipwreck, these sea urchins that were being farmed by women, and that was a fascinating part of the story, but talking about some of the people that were on the island that they got shipwrecked to. But after a while, those people disappeared because the men were trying to harass the women, and so the entire tribe that was over there went away, leaving them to fend for themselves, but they were all like friendly for a while. This is filled with gross things. Content-wise, this is very violent, very disturbing violence. There's talk about cannibalism, injuries that go on, diseases, and in full, what kind of things went on. I had never really actually known what scurvy was until I read this book. It was too detailed, and scurvy is not a joke, and a lot of people joke about it, but it was a huge deal and it wiped out people intensely. So I just found this book to be overwhelming at times, but also the history was very well spoken about, so it was not bad. I do want to talk about some Christmas books that I read, which is what I've mainly been reading. This is On a Midnight Clear. These are 3 novellas put into one. All of these authors I have heard of. Misty Beller, I had not read any of her stuff until here. The first story was my favorite. Tracy Peterson, her story is a marriage of convenience. You have a widower and a woman that is jilted. They end up marrying because he's got kids that need to be cared for, and they grew up together. They know who they are. When she was a kid, she had a crush on him, so that helps, but it's been a long time. It kind of reminded me of Little House on the Prairie at times with how The Long Winter was, where you have like a rope to the barn and things like that. But the story was very heartfelt. I loved the faith elements in it. It was also the longest of the stories in this book. The second story was about a woman and her brother that run like an in-between house on a carriage ride. You would stop at their house to stay. There is a blizzard that occurs pretty much right after they get this young woman, and there's an injured carriage driver, and then there's a man that is bringing the woman safely to her home, trying to get her there. He was hired to be like a protector. So that man starts to get to know the woman of the house pretty well, and they form a bond. There was a lot of emphasis on a lost item throughout this story, and I think it was too long, but it was very cute. Although I will say the third one was very odd, about a professor, and he had been corresponding, or he does research, scientific research, and her father is a professor. Anyway, he had been corresponding with the father, his daughter. So the researcher and the daughter become close because of letter writing, and he goes to meet her. So he arrives and he's all about her, but she has a low self-image. She thinks she's ugly. She doesn't really think she deserves anyone. So that kind of gets in the way. But then this story takes a turn. This just goes into a brothel and trying to rescue girls from human trafficking issues. And I was just like, what is going on here? So just be aware of that when you read this, that it goes from this love story to this rescue mission, which actually was up my alley because that's the type of stuff I read on a regular basis, but it just didn't make sense for the story. But it was a very cute story overall, and I really liked how it ended up. The Mistletoe Countess. This is another one that I meant to review last time, but I didn't have the time. I was disappointed by this, and I hear so many great reviews about it. I thought it was fun. It was very funny. I really thought that the main character, Grace, was hilarious and very interesting. So this is a story, another marriage of convenience. There is this guy from England. He wants to marry this rich woman from the US, and she's the pretty sister while Grace is the bookworm. And so she doesn't really care about the idea of getting married, and she's quite young. She's like 19 or so. So anyway, Lord Frederick Percy is the name of this guy. And it takes some time. He gets to know her. The reason why they had to get married is very sad. I can't get, like, there are things that I have to be careful about with spoilers for this. I have a problem with Frederick in this story because he has a lot of secrets from his past, and when he gets married, he doesn't explain these secrets. They kind of just come out, and they should have been addressed early on before marriage even. I feel like sometimes, like, even though he's remorseful about these past sins, these past mistakes, these past situations that he's been through, all I know is that it's a very good thing that he has such an understanding wife who is adventurous and carefree and forgiving, because I feel like most women would not be okay with a lot of the things that come out from him. This also has, even though this is I call this a semi-clean romance because there is some very high passion. Yes, they're newlyweds, they're having fun, but they kind of described the way they are passionate a little bit too much. It's not too detailed. It could make you blush though a bit. But let me tell you the main point of this story. Someone is trying to kill Frederick, and Grace wants to discover who is behind these attempted murders, who is behind other things that go on. And it's a mystery. A Winter by the Sea. This is the second book from the series. This is about, there's a family. They are running this guest house in England by the sea, and people are bathing to be healed from illnesses. Emily is just doing her best to live her life kind of carefree. She had this guy that she has always had a thing for, and he kind of left abruptly for a specific reason 2 years earlier. And she was so disappointed because she really, really cared for him and thought he cared for her. But now that it's been some time, she's still hurting. She wants to be a writer. She's trying to get books published. The Duke and Duchess of Kent, little Queen Victoria's parents, back when she was just a princess, they go to the area, which is actually historical. They actually went there. So I find that interesting how the author tied that in to the story. That was just very, very cool. There are a few people that work for the Duke that are now staying with them at their guest house. There are 3 people. There's a guy that loves his dining ware. He has to be the one that does the place setting. There's the chef. And then there is the one who transcribes letters. And she starts to get to know him. They become pretty good friends. They both have a connection, and that connection gets discovered. And it's a very slow book. I almost gave up on this book if it weren't for the fact that I read the first book and I wanted to know what was going to happen to these sisters. Once I got halfway through this book, 200 pages in, it got really good. It was so slow and boring before that. But once we get into it, the way that you learn about the main characters, it starts to come out very nicely. I think that there was good connection, and then there's drama that happens, and it became really good halfway through. This is my least favorite of the books. Then we have The Seaside Homecoming, and this one is about the oldest sister, Claire, who we hear about throughout the books, but we didn't really know much or anything about her. Claire, now she had gone through certain things, and I will say this one has some things that might raise eyebrows because people might get upset. I thought it was very well written. It was very good. And out of the 4 books, this is my favorite. Claire has her own story, and I'm not going to give away what happened, but she had been living in Scotland caring for a great aunt, I think it was. Maybe she was just an aunt. She has to go back home, but her mother is not really willing to talk to her because of a situation that happened in the past a couple years earlier. The 2 twins, Emily and Viola, those 2, they reach out to Claire. They both want to see Claire. Sarah is kind of like on her mom's side, but she also cares about her sister, so she's in the middle. And Georgiana, the youngest of them, really, really misses her and wants to see her so badly. And she has no idea what had happened. This woman, she's 28. So she's like old and unmarried. But when she comes home, she decides to do something kind of like what her family does. Instead of a guest house, she's in a boarding house of sorts. And she is now a partner in business with the man who runs the house. And he is a widower with a daughter. They get to know each other on a business perspective, but then a friendship basis. And I thought it was very nice how we got to know their stories and to learn her personality, how sweet she is, and to learn his personality. This is really a good one. So because I'm in that whole mindset, I also decided to find a Sea View Christmas, and I found the audio version. I couldn't find a physical copy, and I was looking, my library didn't have it yet, had where they were acquiring it, and I was like, I need to read it now. A Sea View Christmas is more about Sarah and Georgiana, mainly Sarah, but it was good to finally learn a little bit more about Georgiana. She is the tomboy of the sisters, the youngest, and I thought this was great. I feel like all of the books, especially the second book, if it were this length or a little bit longer than this length, it would have been perfect. A Sea View Christmas is about a character from the first book coming back to visit Sea View. He comes from Scotland with his stepdaughter, and he is a widower. There's a lot of widowers in this series, I realize, or a few of them, or widows. Anyway, there is lovely stuff about different customs around Christmas time. There's like 12th Day, which I didn't really know much about. You know, the 12 Days of Christmas, you sing that song, you're like, what is this about? I didn't really know. I knew slightly, but this gives you a little bit more about that. Also some Scottish traditions around Christmas. I thought that was really cute. This was a good way to close this series. I kind of wish that there will be another one, but it's done. I thought that the way it ended kind of rushed a little bit, the epilogue type of thing. I wanted to know a little bit more, but it was very nice and great for Christmas time. Hope for the Mission. I got this book from Herald Press through NetGalley, and I've read several books from Herald Press. So I was really happy to be able to read this. This is about homelessness. Now, this was really good, actually. Something that I learned was that you think about if people are homeless, it must be mainly in places of poverty, but this book states that it was mainly in places where you have the rich and the people that run businesses that are a little more ritzy, that is where it is, and not in places of poverty. They actually have more housing in places of poverty. It was talking about programs, different organizations that tried their best and had failed for how they do outreach and how their shelters are not good because they have strict rules. I love that the author was kind of saying, this just doesn't work. They expect people to have to go by these rules. They have to be Christians. They have to understand the gospel, and then they want to help them instead of trying to help their actual needs first and then get to their spiritual level later. So I enjoyed hearing that perspective and seeing some of the problems from people over time doing what they thought was best and how it has not worked. It's caused problems. And there were some really good organizations that they talked about. My favorite two were Bridge of Hope, which I have known about for a while, and also about Lazarus. 40% of those that are unsheltered live in their cars. They have these encampment sweeps that happen throughout the country where there are these people living in tents or living on the streets in groups, and these encampments get raided. In Minneapolis, it costs $120,000 to do these sweeps, and they end up spending $5 to $7 million in 3 years. But then it's also $30,000 to criminalize homeless people. But what's crazy is that all it costs is about $10,000 to actually put these people in some sort of form of housing. All these millions of dollars and thousands of dollars are spent on things that hurt people instead of help people. This book also talks about how there have been churches that have been so into wanting to care for other people and to live out what the Bible says for those who are poor, to help the oppressed, and to help people in need. And there are a couple of stories, not many, I wish there were a lot more actually, throughout this. There have been churches where they do things with their programs, such as trying to provide clothing for people, give them showers, but the problem is that they keep coming back for more clothing because they have no way of washing them. And so instead, now they have laundry facilities to try to help these people. So it's just great how, they offer food, clothing and shelter. So hard with financial situations these days, the economy, that homelessness is just booming because people they're like, I can't afford to live anywhere. And if you can't afford to live somewhere, that's like the worst. Here's a quote from the book that I really liked. This is the moment when church is called back to its identity as followers of a peculiar way of loving neighbors more than its traditions, its history, and its poverty. A church that is willing to live and even die for the sake of others. So I really thought this was great if you want to learn more about how to help people that are dealing with this and to encourage you to reach out or be involved with helping people. This was very insightful. You've been such a great audience today. Thank you so much for sticking around this long. There are only 2 books to go. Meddling with Mistletoe. This book I did read very, very quickly, but it took me a while to get into, probably 75 pages. And I must say, I don't like this cover. I think it's kind of not great. I love art and stuff, but this is probably why I don't read a lot of contemporary romance, is because I have a hard time with some of this plain looking art lately. Anyway, let's get to the story though. The story was cute. Whitney, she has been trying to get into culinary school. She has to save money for it. She goes to this inn, Red Door Inn. She has formed bonds with the people there, and she asks if she can use their ovens because she's trying to sell pies to be able to get into culinary school. The person that she asks says, well, if you could help me with my children. She's like, yeah, I could do that. So she helps out. They get along. The kids, she loves the kids. So it works out. This woman who is a long-term guest, I believe long-term guest. Her name is Aretha. Her name is actually Aretha Franklin. And they do make a point like not to be confused with the Aretha Franklin. She has this nephew, really cares for her a lot. So his name is Daniel. Whitney, she comes across Daniel. Daniel is trying to help a business situation for his aunt. And there's this other girl that comes over named Ruby, and she is going to work for this business opportunity situation with them. And the aunt really wants Ruby and Daniel to be an item. And Whitney is like, okay, that's fine. But she starts to fall for Daniel here and there, and that's causing a lot of issues. So she's all in her head throughout a lot of this book. And Daniel, now he has a girl that he wanted to marry at one point, and she broke his heart like a couple years earlier, and he has not moved on very well. He's very much about just doing his business, his job, and not much else. But now he's got something that's getting his attention. So yes, this is set around the holidays. There is mistletoe. It was cute. I liked it. It wasn't the best story, but it was very sweet, and I felt the emotions. I had a hard time with Whitney at times because I just wanted her to say how she felt throughout the book. Just express yourself. She didn't listen all the time. And last but not least is A Cross-Country Christmas. This was really good. I liked this one, and I shed a tear while reading it. Lauren, she grew up with a lot of situations in her family that weren't good. They don't explain all of it, but they do explain some of it. So she has a hard time with Christmas even. But her brother, that she is kind of close to her brother, he wants her to come visit him. She does not fly on planes. She works in California, and he's back in the Midwest where they grew up. He has a baby coming any day, and he's like, I want you to meet the baby, come visit. But he has his best friend who also works in California that grew up with them. And he's like, oh, I'll have Will take you. And she's kind of like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with Will, but all right, if it's for you, I'll do it. So Will picks her up, and they go for a road trip because he's like, I want to take the stops. I want to enjoy my time when we go back home. They take like almost a week or a week. Problem is that Lauren, she has some bad memories with Will because she grew up really having a major crush on him, and he hurt her. She doesn't understand how a guy like him acts the way he does because suddenly he seems like a different person than what she envisioned. He seems so typical, like a frat boy to her, and now he seems so kind. It's just an interesting situation to learn their stories, to see why Will has maybe changed, and to see why Lauren has to maybe give him some grace. So yes, another contemporary romance. This one's not Christian, just in case people are wondering. This one has some faith, just so you know, not deeply. All of these are Christian books, but A Cross-Country Christmas is not. But it's very clean. There is mention of a couple things because there's some drunkenness, but they never say like it's a fun or good thing. And they do talk, I think there's mention of drugs too at one point. Certain things that you would find in culture of the US. It's a little, not even innuendos, but little crude jokes here and there. I wouldn't say they're demeaning though. They're just, I mean, there's talks about, I know she mentions at one point something about breasts and bras, but there's nothing, like I said, it's very clean. There's just kissing. But I thought it was very heartfelt and very fun. I liked their road trip and the humor they have between them and how they get to know one another better. And yes, they stay in separate rooms in case you're wondering. I know this was another long one. I know you guys, you're so amazing for sticking around. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all. You are wonderful. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. Help me grow my channel more. I have been on here for, is it 9 months now? I would like to hit 200. I'm almost there. So if you can maybe try to help me with that. My goal, I was hoping to get more, but hey, I've been happy with those I've interacted with. You are so great. And I love the community that I have built with people, getting to know them. So thank you. You are inspiring. And I love learning about the books that you are reading as well. And if you have read these books, I've enjoyed hearing your thoughts on them, if you like them or not. Have a good one. Thank you so much.